All right, so today we're going to look at something pretty interesting, guidance counselors.
Yeah, and we have this really cool resource. Um, it's called Top 21 Guidance Counselor Interview Questions, and it's specifically for 2025.
So it's like a sneak peek into the future of guidance counseling.
Right, exactly. It's what schools are looking for when they hire new counselors these days.
But I think it's cool for everyone, not just people who want to be counselors.
Right, because it shows us the support that students can get nowadays.
Yeah, like it's not just about college applications or good grades anymore, right? There's so much more to it.
Totally. It's about helping students grow in every way possible.
So we're going to kind of unpack all that in this deep dive. We'll look at how counselors help students with all sorts of things, like their personal needs, their safety, and getting ready for the future.
So let's jump right in. The first question they ask is, how do you make sure your counseling program works for all kinds of students?
That's a good one because every student's different, right?
Right. And the answer talks about getting to know the students really well, like their academics, social life, emotions, and all that.
Yeah, they even mention using surveys and one-on-one chats to get all that info.
Exactly. Because you can't help someone if you don't know what they need, right?
Makes sense. So it's all about being proactive and gathering data.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good lesson for anyone listening. If you want to really help someone, you got to be proactive and learn as much as you can about them.
So beyond the usual academic stuff, what else might this data tell counselors?
Well, it could show them trends in like how students are feeling emotionally or socially.
Oh, yeah, like maybe certain groups of students are having a tougher time, or maybe they don't even know about the resources that are available.
Exactly. It's not just numbers on a sheet.
Yeah.
It paints a bigger picture of what's going on with the students.
Okay, cool. Moving on to goal setting. The second question asks how counselors help students make and achieve their goals, both academic and personal.
Right. And the answer mentions the SMART goals approach, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that. It's a classic for a reason.
But what's really interesting here is that it's not just the counselor telling the student what their goals should be.
Oh, so it's more like a team effort.
Exactly. They work together to figure out what's important to the student and then break those big goals down into smaller steps.
That makes sense because a huge goal can feel really overwhelming, right?
Totally.
Mm.
But when you break it down into smaller chunks, it feels way more manageable.
And that probably makes students feel more in control too, right?
Absolutely. Give them a sense of ownership over their goals.
Okay, the next question tackles a pretty serious topic, bullying.
Yeah, it asks about how counselors deal with it both proactively and reactively.
So like preventing it in the first place and then dealing with it when it happens.
Exactly. They mention things like anti-bullying programs and awareness campaigns to prevent it.
And then if it does happen, they talk about meeting with the students involved and trying to mediate the situation.
Right, it's all about creating a safe and respectful environment.
But I bet mediating a bullying situation can be really tricky.
Oh, for sure. There can be power imbalances, or one student might not want to admit they did wrong.
It takes a lot of skill to handle all that.
Absolutely. Counselors need to be ready for those tough situations.
So what about when a student's going through a really tough time personally, like a crisis?
Yeah, question 4 asks about that.
It says that counselors should create a safe space for students to talk, listen without judging, validate their feelings, and figure out how serious the situation is.
All super important steps.
Definitely, because if a student feels judged, they won't open up.
Exactly. It's all about building trust so they feel comfortable sharing.
So how important is that non-judgmental part in those first few moments?
Oh, it's crucial because if a student feels judged or dismissed, they're not going to come back for help in the future.
It's like you said, building trust is everything.
Totally. And it shows that the counselor really cares and wants to help.
Your next up is how counselors work with teachers.
Yeah. Question 5 asks about that.
And the answer highlights the importance of open communication and regular meetings.
So they can talk about student progress and any problems that come up.
It's like they're all part of a team working together to support the student.
Exactly. It's not just the counselor doing their own thing.
So what are some benefits of having those regular chats between counselors and teachers?
Well, for one, it helps them catch problems early on.
Oh, yeah, like a teacher might notice a student acting differently in class.
Exactly. And then they can tell the counselor who can look into it further.
And it also makes sure that everyone's on the same page about how to help the student.
Right. It's a more coordinated approach.
Now, what about students who don't want to go to counseling?
Yes. Question 6 tackles that tricky situation.
It says that counselors need to be patient, persistent, and make a comfortable environment where students don't feel pressured.
It's all about making them feel heard and respected.
But why might a student resist counseling in the first place?
There could be a bunch of reasons. Maybe they think it's embarrassing, or maybe they had a bad experience before.
Maybe they're just scared to open up.
Right. So it's the counselor's job to figure out what's causing that resistance and address it.
So it's not about forcing them to talk, but more about making them feel safe enough to open up on their own.
Exactly. It's about building that trust and showing them that counseling can actually be helpful.
Okay, let's shift gears and talk about data.
Data. Oh, yeah. Question 7 asks how counselors use data to see if their programs are working.
Makes sense. You got to track progress somehow.
Right. And they mentioned looking at things like attendance rates, grades, and feedback from students, parents, and teachers.
So it's not just about gut feelings. They're actually looking at hard numbers.
Exactly. It's about being data-driven and making sure their programs are having a real impact.
I can see why that would be important for someone who values thoroughness.
Totally.
Uh,
But I imagine there are challenges with collecting and using all this data right.
oh, for sure. It takes time and effort, and it's not always easy to say for certain that changes are directly because of the counseling programs.
Right. There are a lot of factors that can affect a student's success.
And of course, there's the whole issue of keeping the data private and using it ethically.
All important points. Data is powerful, but it has to be handled responsibly.
Speaking of responsibility, question 8 is all about confidentiality.
Yeah, it's a big one. The answer basically says that everything a student tells their counselor is private.
Which makes sense. Students need to feel safe to share anything.
Right, but there's a big exception if the student is in danger or might hurt someone else.
Then the counselor has to tell someone.
Exactly. It's a tricky balance between keeping things private and keeping people safe.
Okay, on to question 9, which is about how counselors help students resolve conflicts.
Oh, that's a good one. It says that they should give each student a chance to tell their side of the story in a neutral environment.
And they emphasize active listening, which is so important.
Totally. And then they try to figure out the root cause of the conflict.
Why is finding that root cause so important?
Because if you only deal with the surface level stuff, the problem's just going to come back again later.
Oh yeah, like if two students are fighting over a toy, but the real issue is that they're both feeling jealous.
Exactly. Getting to the root of the problem helps you find a lasting solution.
It's like teaching them real conflict resolution skills they can use for life.
Exactly. And that's super valuable.
Okay, now for question 10, which is all about social emotional learning.
Yeah, it's becoming more and more important these days.
The answer mentions things like role-playing mindfulness exercises and group discussions.
It's about helping students understand and manage their emotions, build healthy relationships, and make good choices.
Those are essential life skills, right?
Absolutely. And it shows that counselors are focused on more than just academics.
They're helping students develop as whole people.
Exactly. Preparing them for success in all areas of life.
Question 11 is all about getting students ready for college and careers.
Yeah, it's about helping them figure out their strengths and interests, explore different career paths, and make a plan for their future.
It's like giving them a roadmap for life after high school.
Exactly. And counselors play a huge role in that process.
They help students figure out what they want to do and how to get there.
It's about opening up possibilities and making those big decisions feel less daunting.
Question 12 tackles the link between academic struggles and personal problems.
Right? Sometimes those academic issues are just a symptom of something deeper going on.
And the answer emphasizes creating a safe space for students to talk about what's bothering them.
Because if you don't address the root cause, the academic problems are just going to keep coming back.
It's all connected, right?
Totally. You can't separate a student's academic life from their personal life.
Okay, question 13 is about working with parents.
Yeah, parents are such important partners in a student's education.
The answer mentions regular communication, like newsletters, conferences, and progress updates.
It's about keeping parents in the loop and working together to support the student.
So everyone's on the same page.
Exactly. And parents feel like they're part of the process.
Question 14 is all about equity and how counselors support students from disadvantaged backgrounds.
Yeah, that's super important, making sure all students have a fair chance.
They give a specific example of a mentorship program where students are paired with volunteers from the community.
That's awesome. It gives them extra support and guidance,
It shows that counselors are committed to helping all students succeed.
no matter what their background is.
Question 15 gives a real-life example of a student being bullied.
Oh, wow. That's a tough situation.
The answer goes through all the steps the counselor takes, like ensuring the student's safety, working with parents and teachers, and setting clear consequences for the bully.
It's a good example of how counselors put those theories into practice.
They're dealing with real-life problems and helping students through difficult times.
It's not just talk. They're taking action.
With so many students needing help, I bet counselors get overwhelmed.
Oh, for sure. So question 16 asks how they prioritize their workload,
The answer says that urgent safety issues always come first.
which makes sense. Those are the most critical situations.
And they also mention using software to manage cases and communicating clearly with their team,
It's all about being organized and efficient.
making sure that no student falls through the cracks.
Right. They had to be able to juggle a lot of responsibilities.
Okay, question 17 is all about cultural competence.
Yeah, that's super important in today's diverse schools.
The answer emphasizes understanding and respecting students' different cultural backgrounds.
It's about being sensitive to their values, beliefs, and communication styles.
So how does that actually play out in a counselor's work?
Well, for example, they need to be aware of different cultural views on things like asking for help.
Oh yeah, in some cultures it might be seen as a sign of weakness.
Exactly. And counselors need to be aware of those differences so they can connect with students in a way that's respectful and effective.
It's about building trust and rapport across cultures.
Totally. And making sure that all students feel comfortable coming to them for help.
Question 18 goes back to data and asks about measuring the effectiveness of a specific program.
Oh, yeah. It uses the example of a peer mentoring program
And they talk about tracking things like attendance grades and behavior reports.
to see if the program is actually making a difference
It's all about using data to make informed decisions.
and to show that their programs are actually working.
Makes sense. You got to be able to justify what you're doing.
Right. It's about accountability and continuous improvement.
Question 19 is interesting. It's about dealing with a teacher who's resistant to accommodations for a student.
Oh, wow. That can be a tricky situation.
They share a story about a teacher who didn't want to give accommodations to a student with dyslexia, and the counselor approached it by listening to the teacher's concerns, providing evidence-based research, and offering practical strategies.
It's a good example of how counselors can work collaboratively with teachers.
Even when there's disagreement.
Exactly. It's about finding common ground and putting the students' needs first.
Okay, almost done. Question 20 is about building trust with hesitant students.
Yeah, that's always a challenge.
The answer suggests being approachable and having casual conversations with students outside of formal counseling sessions.
So they see the counselor as a real person, not just some authority figure.
Why are those informal interactions so important for building trust?
Well, it helps break down those barriers.
Yeah, it's like you're showing them that you care and that you are there for them even outside of those scheduled meetings.
Exactly. Makes them feel more comfortable and more likely to open up when they need help.
And finally, question 21 talks about supporting students who've experienced trauma.
Oh, wow, that's a heavy one.
They give an example of a student who witnessed domestic violence. And the answer highlights all the steps the counselor takes, like ensuring a student's safety, referring them to a therapist, working with teachers to be flexible, and connecting the family with community resources.
Wow, it really shows the depth of what counselors do.
They're not just handing out college applications, they're dealing with serious issues and helping students heal.
It's a truly demanding but rewarding job.
So going through all these interview questions, it's clear that guidance counselors wear a lot of hats.
They really do. It's way more than just academic advising.
They're advocates, mentors, problem solvers, data analysts, and so much more.
They play such a vital role in supporting students' well-being and helping them succeed in life.
It's inspiring to see the dedication and expertise they bring to their work.
Absolutely. And for you listening, hopefully this deep dive has given you a better understanding of what guidance counselors do and the impact they have.
It's definitely made me appreciate their work even more.
Me too. They're unsung heroes in the education system.
So here's a final thought for you to ponder. If you had to choose just one, what do you think is the most important quality a guidance counselor should have, and how do you think that quality would make a difference in a student's life?
That's a great question. It's definitely something to think about.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of guidance counseling.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.